Operation Iron Dawn, when pirates met the U.S. Navy and regretted every second of it. June 13th, 4:47 a.m. The Gulf of Aden. Darkness so thick you could cut it with a knife. Somewhere out there, hidden behind the black wall of ocean and night, 22 American lives were moving through the most dangerous shipping corridor on Earth, loaded with 38,000 tons of jet fuel bound for U.S. military airfields across the Western Pacific. One ship, one crew, and a predator already circling. What happened in the next 51 minutes would go down as one of the most precise, most brutal, most American defensive operations in the modern history of anti-piracy warfare. No hesitation, no surrender, no mercy for those who came hunting. This is the story of the motor tanker Resolute Star, and the night she turned a pirate ambush into a lesson the Gulf of Aden will never forget. Stay with me, because this one gets intense. The ship, the mission, the stakes. The Resolute Star was no ordinary vessel. A medium-range product carrier, hull fresh from a dry dock in Norfolk, flying the American flag with every right. Her cargo, 38,000 tons of JP-8 aviation fuel, was under contract with Military Sealift Command, headed for Singapore, then onward to forward operating bases across the Pacific Theater. Captain Daniel Mercer, 53, 28 years at sea, a man who had navigated the English Channel in force 10 storms and the Strait of Malacca at night with no pilot. He was the kind of captain who didn't raise his voice until the moment it was absolutely necessary. That moment was coming. 2 days out from Djibouti, before the Resolute Star entered the high-risk corridor, Mercer ordered what the maritime industry calls hardening, the total transformation of a civilian vessel into something that fights back. By the time his crew was done, the Resolute Star was wrapped bow to stern in double-layer concertina razor wire, NATO CK3 pattern, 22mm blades on both faces, 40 coils per side. The most vulnerable section amidships, where the freeboard drops to barely 4 meters when a ship is riding heavy, received triple-density coverage. Steel cable anchors, clamp reinforced brackets. A grappling hook thrown from a pirate skiff would have caught wire, and the man pulling on the rope would have pulled himself directly onto blades. Mannequins made from old work coveralls and hard hats were positioned on the bridge wings and the after deck. At 300 meters in low light, they looked exactly like watchstanders. Because sometimes the best defense isn't armor, it's illusion. The Citadel on sea deck was stocked, 96 hours of water, food, and medical supplies. Armored shutters sealed every porthole. Engine room access doors were reinforced with welded steel plates from the inside. A backup propulsion control panel was installed inside the Citadel itself. If the worst happened, the crew could still maneuver the ship without ever stepping outside the armored compartment. Do you know what it feels like to turn a civilian ship into a fortress in 48 hours, knowing something might already be out there watching? Can you imagine the weight of that responsibility on Mercer's shoulders? By 11 p.m. on June 12th, the transformation was complete. The captain declared full combat readiness. From that moment forward, the ship ran an anti-piracy lockdown. Deck cleared, crew rotated in 2-hour shifts, security teams posted on port and starboard bridge wings, scanning. Contact. June 13th. 6:15 a.m. Petty Officer First Class, in another life, a Marine raider, call sign Hawk, fixed his binoculars on a shadow at the horizon. 10 miles out, a wooden dhow, roughly 25 meters. Yemeni-style stern wheelhouse. Standard silhouette for these waters. Except this dhow was holding a course within 2 degrees of the Resolute Star's own heading, and it had been doing so for 14 minutes. That is not a fisherman. 90 seconds later, 2 smaller shapes detached from behind the dhow. Fast attack skiffs, outboard powered, spreading wide, one holding at the mother vessel, the second already banking onto an interception vector. Estimated closing speed, 26 knots. Hawk keyed the intercom. 3 words, contact. 2 skiffs. His partner, call sign Rook, reached the bridge in 25 seconds with the long rifle and 2 loaded magazines. Captain Mercer pressed the UKMTO emergency button at 6:18 a.m. The distress signal burst through Inmarsat-C to the coordination center in Dubai and retransmitted instantly to every coalition military vessel within response range. The signal reached USS Gravely, DDG-107, an Arleigh Burke-class destroyer running a patrol track in the northern Gulf of Aden, 95 miles to the south. On Gravely's bridge, the officer of the deck had one job: wake up the entire ship. He did it in under 30 seconds. On the flight deck, an MH-60 or Seahawk helicopter, already in standby condition, began spinning up rotors. Armed with a .50 caliber door gun, FLIR sensors, and a crew of 4, she would be airborne in 6 minutes. Estimated time of arrival at the Resolute Star's position, 32 minutes. 32 minutes that this crew would fight alone. If you were standing on that bridge right now, watching those skiffs close the distance at 26 knots, what would be going through your mind? What would you do? The attack. 6:21 a.m. The lead skiff was at 900 meters and closing. 5 men visible. Standard Somali attack package. A helmsman aft, 1 man with an RPG-7 launcher amidships, 3 with AK-47s along the rails. At 26 knots, the distance was collapsing at 13 meters per second. Time to effective AK-47 range, 46 seconds. Time to boarding range, 71 seconds. Mercer's voice came over the PA, flat and steady. All non-essential crew, Citadel. Now, 19 crew members moved in practiced silence. 23 seconds later, the Citadel doors locked from the inside. 4-point throw bolts. No one was getting in without a cutting torch. 5 people remained topside. Mercer and his second mate on the bridge. The chief engineer locked to his engine console, holding maximum revolutions. And 2 former Marines standing between 22 American lives and a boat full of men who intended to take them. Rook moved to the starboard bridge wing behind a reinforced steel partition and settled behind his .308 bolt-action rifle. Trigicon optic. Calm breathing. Target acquisition. Hawk moved aft along the port side. Carbine up, 6 magazines loaded. At 550 meters, Rook placed the crosshairs on the helmsman of the lead skiff, the man controlling the attack vector. Without that man, the skiff had no direction. Without direction, the skiff had no attack. At 415 meters, Rook fired. 1 shot. The round covered that distance in just over half a second and struck with the accuracy that only years of training produce. The skiff lurched violently. The outboard motor screamed as the thrust vector went chaotic. The bow kicked skyward. Men scrambled for handholds as the boat began spinning in a wide, uncontrolled arc. At that exact moment, Hawk opened fire on the second skiff coming in from the port quarter. 3-round bursts, methodical, walking impact points across the hull and into the engine housing. The Yamaha 60 horsepower outboard on the second skiff took 4 hits, 3 to the cylinder block, 1 to the fuel line. The motor died mid-scream. The skiff coasted forward on inertia, swinging 90 degrees off axis as it decelerated 280 meters from the hull of the Resolute Star. Does that make the hair on the back of your neck stand up? 2 men, 2 weapons, 46 seconds, and the entire attack is neutralized. That's what American training looks like under pressure. The surviving pirates on the first skiff, motor damaged and course broken, opened up with their AKs, chaotic, unaimed fire. Rounds sparked off the steel superstructure. 1 punched through a galley porthole. Several more caught the razor wire netting and died there. Not one human being on the Resolute Star was touched. The aftermath and the cavalry. 6:26 a.m. Mercer ordered a 35-degree course change to starboard and rang for 95% power, 15.4 knots. The Resolute Star began pulling away from both disabled skiffs and the retreating mother dhow. The second skiff, drifting dead in the water at 280 meters, made one last attempt. The 4 surviving pirates grabbed a paddle and tried to row out of Hawk's line of fire. Rook tracked them through his scope. He held his fire. Under private maritime security rules of engagement, lethal force is not authorized against an adversary demonstrating clear disengagement. He lowered the rifle. Let them row. The dhow turned southeast toward the Yemeni coast. The engagement, from first contact to cessation of fire, had lasted 4 minutes and 52 seconds. 89 rounds expended total. 0 American casualties. 6:50 a.m. A shape materialized on the southern horizon, moving fast and low. The MH-60R Seahawk from USS Gravely, running full power, fleur-locked on the drifting second skiff. The helicopter established in orbit overhead and radioed the 4 pirates below. The message was not complicated. Hands up. Don't move. We're coming. 20 minutes later, Gravely herself arrived. A 9,200-ton Arleigh Burke destroyer, 5-inch gun on the bow, Harpoon missiles in the wing launchers, Tomahawks in the VLS cells forward. The kind of ship that makes entire navies reconsider their life choices. The rigid inflatable boat team from Gravely pulled alongside the disabled skiff. 4 Somali nationals were taken aboard without resistance. The first skiff had managed to limp back to the dhow on a flooded motor. The dhow was already running for Yemeni waters. Gravely did not pursue. Operational tasking and rules of engagement for that corridor did not authorize a chase into territorial waters. What do you think was going through the minds of those pirates when they saw a U.S. Navy destroyer coming over the horizon? Do you think they expected that? Do you think they expected any of this? The deeper story. 3 lessons from one morning. The Resolute Star incident wasn't just a clean defensive action. It was a validation, brutal, precise, and definitive, of 3 principles that the maritime security industry has been arguing about for 15 years. Lesson 1. Armed security on board is the single most effective piracy deterrent in existence. In the entire recorded history of modern Somali piracy going back to 2008, no vessel carrying professionally armed security personnel under the private contractor armed security personnel framework has ever been successfully hijacked. Not one. The Resolute Star is another entry on that list. Lesson 2. Hardening measures. The wire, the mannequins, the shutters, the citadel are critical infrastructure, not optional theater. Without the razor wire slowing the approach, without the citadel giving the crew a survivable position, without the psychological effect of the dummy watchstanders creating target uncertainty, those 89 rounds might not have been enough. Hardening buys time. Time buys survival. But hardening alone, without active fire, buys at most 8 minutes. In this scenario, 8 minutes was not enough. The math was simple and unforgiving. Lesson 3. Naval response time in the Gulf of Aden has improved significantly since the chaotic years of 2009 through 2012, but 32 minutes is still 32 minutes. The coalition fleet, American, European, combined maritime forces, is a presence, not a guarantee. Every merchant vessel in that corridor needs to understand one truth. In the gap between sending a distress signal and seeing a gray hull on the horizon, you are on your own. The Resolute Star's crew understood that truth. They prepared for it. They trained for it. And when it arrived at 26 knots on a June morning with an RPG and 3 AKs, they handled it the way Americans handle it. With precision. With discipline. With absolute zero hesitation. The Resolute Star arrived in Singapore 4 days behind schedule, rerouted south through the Bab el-Mandeb Strait and around the island of Socotra. Her cargo was offloaded and transshipped on schedule to American military airfields across the Western Pacific. Fuel that would burn in the engines of F/A-18s and B-1BS and MV-22 Ospreys, powering the forward presence of American air power across an entire ocean. Captain Mercer filed his incident report, noted 0 casualties on the American side, and prepared his ship for the return voyage. The 4 detainees taken from the disabled skiff were processed by coalition maritime law enforcement teams aboard USS Gravely and transferred for prosecution. The mother dhow vanished into Yemeni waters and was never positively re-identified. The Resolute Star sailed on. Because that's what American ships do. They get hit, they fight back, they complete the mission. Every single time. And here are the questions I want you to answer in the comments right now. If you were Captain Mercer, knowing you had 32 minutes to hold the line alone, would you have made the same calls he did? And which part of this mission hit you hardest? The preparation, the fight, or the moment Gravely finally appeared on the horizon? Drop your answers below. Let's talk about it.